Two age statement Scotch whiskies available in your local supermarket, but which one should you buy? Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, it's time for some more Scotch in our lives. I'm aware it has been a little while since I've covered, well, a lot of whiskey in general, but Scotch in particular, and these two have been catching my eye almost more than anything else of late on my whiskey shelf behind me, so I thought it would be a good time to bring them together, hit them side by side and find out, well, which one is the right one for you. What have we got here then? Well, it's all relatively self-explanatory. Two different whiskies, two different distilleries, both aged 12 years, or both a 12-year age statement whiskey, and both available in UK supermarkets, generally speaking. I'm not sure that both of them are available in all of them, but both of them are certainly available in multiple of them, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to get down to it. We're going to start off with the Glenlivet 12, this of course being a Speyside whiskey, and then we'll move on to the Old Pulteney 12, which is of course a Highland whiskey, but also a coastal whiskey, which brings some very specific and interesting flavours along with it. Both of these distinctly unpeated, quite floral, quite fruity, and yeah, I really gel with both of these at the minute, if I'm honest. If you're sat here wondering, are either of these even going to be for me? Well, this is the route I see it. These are for people who are looking to take that next step up on their whiskey journey, with Scotch in particular. These are not the cheapest bargain bottles on the shelf, but they also aren't exorbitantly expensive. I will pop the prices on screen now so you can see, but in effect, for me, these are, you've done your £20 to £30 range, you kind of worked out what you like, and now you're looking for a step up, and both of these in general flitter between the £35 to £45 mark. So yeah, a notable step up, but they are also a notable kind of amp up in terms of complexity and, for me, quality as well. Now, let's not make any mistakes. Both of these are produced by distillers owned by very large scale corporations. As far as I'm aware, neither of these are non-chill filtered or uncoloured, so I'm expecting both to have colour additives in them. And if you're an absolute purist, that is not really what you're looking for, but at the same time, at this price point, I'm really going to struggle to tell you to go and buy something else when it comes to the ease, of course, of buying from a supermarket. So first up, the Glenlivet 12. Let me just pop the other bottle over to the side there. As you can see, these bottles have had quite a bit taken out of them because they do keep taking my fancy. This one was actually bought by a friend a few months ago when he came around just to enjoy. We enjoyed quite a bit of it that night. I've had a few since then, but yeah, if you just take a look at that, it's a nice traditional label. And to be honest, I was really put off Glenlivet a long time ago because of the Founder's Reserve, which is also a supermarket bottle. It's the cheaper end of what they do in that realm, and frankly I think it's awful. I just don't understand how anyone really appreciates that dram, because it's just poor, in my opinion. I don't gel with it in the slightest. So when a friend rocked up with this, I thought, ooh, Glenlivet, really? Am I gonna really gel? Anyway, long story short, I think it's pretty good. So, which is why it is in this test. Let's get a Glencairn out and get a little pour going. Cork test. Now, that was slightly anticlimactic there, but there we go. Okay. So these tests, because both of these are 40% ABV, there's going to be no water additions, no testing it on ice or anything else. This is just straight up out the bottle as it comes, which, to be honest, I think is the best way to drink both of these. The colour on the Glenlivet then, it's got this kind of nice light gold, almost straw colour to it. It is a slightly lighter Scotch, but that said, it probably has got some colourant added to it as well, so it would be even lighter in real deal. But it is 12 years old, so it's not the youngest out there, and it's kind of, 12-year-old really is where you're into genuine age statements. When you get down to kind of 8 and 10, well, to be honest, a lot of non-age statement whiskey will have a lot of 8 and 10-year-old whiskey in it, so it's a bit pointless. But 12 for me is where it really starts to creep up. If you are chasing age statements, and that's a whole other conversation. You shouldn't be, in effect, because young whiskey can be fantastic, but when it comes to the traditional monikers, 12 really for me is where it properly starts to get interesting. And yeah, it looks very nice, to be fair. There's not really much else to say about it. The aromas on this one, sweet, slightly citrusy, ever so slightly tropical fruity in places, and it's got this almost slightly acidic sharpness that really hones that in. It's not mango, papaya, big sweet fruits. It's much more kind of on the sweet end of citrus, moving through things towards kind of unripe mango and maybe a bit of pineapple even in there. It's that kind of range. Ultimately though, the booze is a little prickly, but it's relatively soft. It's a few woody notes, of course, and there is ever such a slight kind of cleansing, cleaner, I don't want to say antiseptic, because antiseptic in Scotch is a very distinct note. It's like kind of that THP thing, but this has got like a, I think it's just the cleansing property of alcohol mixed in with those slightly more citrusy notes that bring together something, well, I'll be honest, a little bit like cleaning products, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's just, yeah, it doesn't smell dirty, which it won't do because it's pretty boozy. Anyway, let's give it a sip, shall we? Cheers. Oh, I've just got a flavour out of that I've never picked up before. It's not been that long since I've had a splash of this, to be honest, and even so, it seems to have changed quite a bit whilst it's been open. Now, I'm going to go for another sip before I say it, because it could just be an effect of the last thing I ate, drank, whatever, although that was a fair old while ago, but let's give it a go. Interesting. It is still there. We'll go through it though, and I'll point it out because it's towards the end later on. So, with this whiskey, up front, it's very light, floral, big honey tones, really. Quite sweet, actually, like really a lot sweeter than you would expect from a generically available effectively run of the mill, even though it's not the cheap end of the mill, supermarket Scotch. Then into that mid phase, a few prickly notes. The fruit element is there. It's very much dialed down. It's like roasted and caramelized tropical fruits. Still much more towards that both kind of citrus, pineapple-y end of things, but it's, yeah, like honey glazed pineapple is probably not a bad descriptor of it, if I'm honest. Then towards the back, bit of a sharp boozy note, not overpowering though, not overwhelming, and you get this nice, pronounced but short-lived kind of jab from like a bit more citrus, a bit more oomph out of it, really. And then on the aftertaste, initially very much as per the rest of the description, really. Soft, sweet, honey, floral, a bit of the tropical fruit thing. But then right at the end, just whenever you think it's all gone, you get this dry, woody, oaky, earthy, but not peaty, not smoky. It's almost like the pit of a stone fruit, that kind of woody, earthy thing. It's very nice, whatever it is. I don't know when it appeared in this bottle. I don't remember it from before, but actually I don't think I've ever reviewed this properly, so maybe I've just not thought about it quite enough. But anyway, as you can tell, I'm really enjoying that one. It is a very, very nice whiskey for that price point. Like, I do struggle not to go, you know what, this is what I'm going to pick up today, because it has enough going on, but it's really inoffensive, it's really quite easy drinking, and yet somehow still feels like a proper Scotch whisky. Right then, quick water break to cleanse the palate, must always do that, and then we'll be back for the old Pulteney. Right then, just before we get into this, a quick look at the bottle. I do always love these old Pulteney bottles, kind of that double dip whiskey still style top to it. They keep their format, it's very nice. It feels heavy, it feels robust, it feels quite premium. It's quite difficult to spin around actually because it's so bottom heavy, but yeah, looks the ticket. The colour on this does look, in the bottle actually, yeah, it is a smidge darker than the Glenlivet, so possibly a bit more good colouring added, but better cork pop though. Right then. In the glass, it doesn't feel like there's a huge amount between them. This is a touch more kind of light, almost rose gold in places, a few more yellowy hues towards the bottom of the glass, but yeah, it's much of a muchness on these, both kind of strawy gold colour in, yeah, there's not too much separating them really. The aromas on this one, it's instantly deeper, richer, bolder is what I'll say, but they're not jarring, they're not spiky, it's all very, it's sweeter, it feels a bit more deluxe somehow, and also you get a little bit of that salty saline sea breeze thing that you would expect from a coastal distillery, and it just starts to mellow everything out that was otherwise maybe a little bit over ramped up compared to the Glenlivet. With it being again a coastal distillery and a Highland whiskey, it has got a little bit of that antiseptic THP kind of vibe going on, but underneath that, if you can take your mind and take that bit away, the overall aroma minus that is actually a little bit kind of salted caramelly, but with a great big helping of antiseptic on top. So it's definitely a mixed bag, but there's something about the depth, the complexity, the contrast, and yet still balance in that really does always draw me in. So let's give it a go. Cheers. I think the thing that always shocks me about this is when you go to take a sip and your nose is just perked over the edge of the glass. Huge aromas on this thing, huge. And you would expect that this is going to be really quite aggressive, really quite intense. And you just take that sip and it just goes down so incredibly easily. It's still, well, insanely flavourful, flavour-packed, contrasting, dynamic, interesting, depthy. And I should point out, this is in relative terms. This is into other mass-produced stuff at this kind of price point and this kind of age. It's not the most depthy, the most interesting thing out there by any means, but we're talking in relative spheres here. And yeah, I don't know, it does do something just right there. Right then, before I risk blabbing too much, a proper taste test so you know what I'm talking about. So right on the tip of the tongue, it's honey again, much like the Glenlivet was, but it's less floral this time. It's a bit more depthy, a bit more kind of honey meat, treacle almost in places. You get a smattering of that antiseptic vibe, but it just keeps it gives you a little bit of a fizz on the tongue, but it doesn't impact the appreciation of the other flavours. It's just there, it's noticeable, but it doesn't, as I say, doesn't dominate, which is quite good. Mid palate, that honey really drives home. Like the Glenlivet felt like honey flavours. This feels like honey. Like it really does. It really is very honey forward on that mid phase. Is there anything else? Booze starts to kick in a bit if you leave it in your mouth, but you're probably not going to do that for quite as long as I just did, so not really an issue. Towards the back of the tongue then, sweetness dies a little bit. You start to get a ramp up of that antiseptic note, and also you start to get a little bit of a shadow of that salinity, that fresh sea air thing that you do get in, well, a lot of coastal whiskies and old Pulteney whiskies in particular. It's only a hint though, really. It's only a hint of what is to come, because on the aftertaste, big spiky hit, the booze hits the back of the throat, really opens up. It's slightly earthy, slightly woody, but again not enough to really pick out very specific notes. There's just an accent really of that flavour profile. And then as you set it down, sit back, your mouth's still relatively sweet from that massive honey experience up front, but you start to get this slightly savoury, slightly drying, well, salt spray. It's beautifully balanced because it's so yin and yang, you know, sweet and savoury combo. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I am going to come back though for a quick sip of the Glenlivet to see if this has changed at all in kind of response to then having tried the old Pulteney. Most people won't be doing this, but it is an interesting test. You do start to open up or block off other things when you start going back and forth between different drams. And it really has. What it's done is the old Pulteney's managed to block off all of the nice, sweet, light, floral honey notes in the Glenlivet. It has started to show a few, I guess, spiky negatives that were otherwise balanced previously. But what it does do is really let that woody, depthy, earthy bit right at the back end that I mentioned before shine through. Immaculate, like it's really quite pleasing. Yeah, real depthy oak flavours. But that is at the detriment of the rest of it. So I would definitely not recommend drinking the Old Pulteney first and then going over to the Glenlivet. But ultimately, they are both very, very nice examples of 12-year-old Scotch whiskies available in your local supermarket. But which one should you buy? Well, to be honest, I think this is a pretty straightforward answer for once. The Glenlivet is for the person who wants something softer, more subtle for some reason. And I don't like gin, so this is going to feel odd saying it. But I feel like if you like very herbal, floral gin, this might be a good transition into something that kind of way. I don't know why that's put in my mind, and I might be totally wrong. Keep in mind that I don't like gin, so this is possibly nonsense. But that is the impression that I get from it. And it is very, very nice, but it is a little bit more soft, it's a little bit more reserved, and it's a little bit more, well, in need of coaxing out the flavours to get the very best from it. However, it's an incredibly easy drinker. On the flip side then, the Old Pulteney, if you already know you like stronger flavours, if you like peated and smoked whiskies, if you like big, strong bourbons, you know, anything like that, then actually the Old Pulteney 12 isn't a bad way to go. It is not itself a massive, powerful, overbearing whiskey. You know, it's not an Ardbeg or anything like that. But in this sphere of relatively balanced, middle of the road in terms of flavour profile whiskies, it does just offer a bit more depth, a bit more interest, but ultimately still retains a very middle of the road, nicely balanced kind of projection of the style. So yeah, your choice is easygoing or something a bit more interesting, but they are neck and neck in reality when we're talking about whiskey as a whole sphere. But for me, which way would I go? I just have a real soft spot for that salty saline thing that kicks in at the end of the Old Pulteney, and I'd always struggle not to go for it, but I'm not always in the mood for it, so I think I'll be keeping one of each on these on the shelf for the foreseeable, because they are just, yeah, both very, very nice indeed. Now, if you're looking at these going, look, that's fine, but I think these are a little bit basic. I want something different. I want something better, something proper. Yeah, proper in inverted commas. You know, the non-chill filtered, non-colorated stuff. My recommendation, as always, with this is this: the Bruichladdich Classic Laddie. That sits just a level above these. Right in the middle. It has ultimately maybe a bit more in common with the Old Pulteney, but yeah, this is I actually want to drink this, but it's a little bit more pricey. Not loads, but enough to be worth considering that difference. But otherwise, yeah, there you go. Those are your choices. Have you tried either of these? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But other than that, that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you'll be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.